call into play certain skills and attitudes I'd learned under the tutelage of a gentleman known as Mac, with fairly messy results, which Beth had witnessed. She'd seen the good, gentle Dr. Jekyll turn briefly into the nasty, violent Mr. Hyde, and the shock had remained with her. Well, there wasn't much point in forcing a woman to live with a man who turned her stomach. Besides, it wasn't much fun for the man. "I guess Reno's your best bet," I said. "Get a good lawyer and tell him I'll sign anything he wants." I'd hesitated then, not wanting to sound too corny and magnanimous, but it had been a pretty good marriage while it lasted, and I had to admit that the cause of the breakup, strictly speaking, lay in my past, not hers. I said, "It seems unlikely, but if the occasion should ever arise that you or the kids need a man of my peculiar talents, don't hesitate to call on me. After all, I'm still their daddy, no matter what a judge says." I'd meant it all right, but it was essentially just one of those impressive lines you speak as you go out the door. I hadn't really expected her ever to take me up on it. I'd walked out and headed for the nearest phone and called Mac long distance to let him know I was coming back to work. He'd been after me to do it, after 15 years of making my living peacefully with typewriter and camera. I'd been in Europe on official government business, never mind what. When notice reached me, I was no longer a married man. Now, only some 6 months later, Beth was asking for help. She must have found it difficult, I reflected. She must have swallowed a lot of pride to write those few lines. She hadn't swallowed quite all of it, however. There was that little parenthesis under the signature, Mrs. Lawrence Logan, that specified the terms on which I was to come, if I did choose to come, quite clearly. Apparently she wasn't quite desperate enough to summon me as just a woman calling to a man. She wanted to make sure I wouldn't get any wrong ideas. If I helped her, she was saying, I was helping her as another man's wife, take it or leave it. "Will you go, Eric?" Mac had asked after I'd read the letter the first time, standing by his desk in Washington on my return from Europe. I was always Eric in that office, no matter what names I might use elsewhere. "Have I a choice?" I asked. Then I glanced at him sharply. He was a lean, middle-aged man with close-clipped gray hair. He wore a gray flannel suit, and he looked about as much like Madison Avenue as an old gray timber wolf looks like your clipped pet poodle. They have some cold, hard, bright, and ruthless men along that street, to be sure, but in one sense they're all thoroughly domesticated. They may talk big about cutting the throats of the opposition or sticking knives in competitors' backs, but they are speaking quite figuratively, of course. The sight of real blood would send them all screaming for the police. Blood has never bothered Mac a bit, as far as I know, and he's been responsible for shedding a lot of it. He interpreted my questioning glance correctly. "Yes," he said. "I read the note. As a matter of fact, not knowing where to reach you, Mrs. Logan sent it to me with a covering letter asking me to look it over and pass it on only if you were not on assignment. There was, she wrote, no point in worrying you if you were not free to come, and she did not wish to interfere with your efficiency if you were on a dangerous mission. She seems quite a sensible and considerate person in many respects, and quite attractive, too. I didn't know you knew my wife, my ex-wife. He said, I paid her a visit last fall, while your divorce was still pending. It wasn't good security, of course, but she already knew more about us than she should after that trouble you had in Santa Fe. Primarily, I wanted to see if she could be trusted to keep quiet, but I did think that perhaps if I explained the patriotic necessity of your work with us, past and present, she might understand." He shrugged his shoulders ruefully. I hadn't known that he'd tried to intercede for me. It was kind of you to take the trouble, sir. A commander must concern himself with whatever affects the morale of his troops, Max said dryly. As it turned out, I accomplished nothing in your behalf. Quite the contrary. Your wife was very nice, very attentive, and quite horrified. She kept looking me over carefully to see where I kept my horns and tail. I said, I've often wondered about that myself, sir. After a moment I asked, Did you meet this fellow Logan, the one she later married? Yes, he owns and manages the guest ranch at which she was staying. He seemed pleasant enough, a lean British type with a sandy Air Force mustache. I had a feeling he might be able to take care of himself in a pinch, but it's hard to tell with these understated expatriate Englishmen. They all make a point of looking